Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a really fascinating look into the foundational structures of Islamic jurisprudence. We're zooming right into those classic summaries, what scholars call a mukhtasar, to help you build a solid mental framework from the absolute ground up. And we're better to start than the very first chapter of knowledge, purification. So let's just get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. The food of the elder is the poison of the baby. This is a quote from the scholars of the past, and wow, it's just such a powerful analogy for how we should approach learning. Think about it. Imagine trying to feed a massive 20-volume encyclopedia of advanced rulings to a total beginner. It's not going to nourish them, right? It's literally going to overwhelm and confuse their whole learning journey. It is poison to their progress. You know, to build a skyscraper, you absolutely have to spend time setting that solid foundation first.
So here is our blueprint for today. We're going to cover 1. The importance of basics, 2. Defining fiqh, 3. The 4 pillars, 4. The art of tahara, 5. The water matrix, and finally 6. Navigating impurities.
Number 1. The importance of basics. You see, scholars of the past brilliantly summarized the vast, super intricate opinions of the 4 imams into systematic, bite-sized books. You can kind of think of these as a collection of foundational bullet points. Step 1 is mastering these exact bullet points, so that you can see the whole picture of knowledge first. Then, step 2 is using those established mental models as actual keys. Because if you know the bullet points by heart, later on, when you open a 20-volume text filled with complex evidences and endless debates, you won't be lost. You'll know exactly where you are on the map.
Number 2. Defining fiqh.
Linguistically, the root of the word fiqh means a deep, profound understanding. But in the specific terminology of the scholars, it refers to knowing the rulings of the Sharia that pertain to the actions of a person. And when we talk about madhahib, the schools of thought, these are really just the organized, summarized understandings that the great imams systematically extracted directly from the Quran and the Sunnah. And this brilliantly illustrates a common myth that we need to bust right now. Fiqh is exclusively about your physical actions, whether an action is halal or haram, how to actually perform your salah, how to fast. It is not about your internal beliefs. Rulings regarding your internal belief, things like the unseen or tawheed, those are studied in a completely separate science called aqidah. Fiqh is all about the physical doing.
Number 3. The 4 pillars.
Traditionally, the entire scope of fiqh is divided into 4 pillars, which serves as kind of the ultimate map. First, you have acts of worship, which covers purification, prayer, charity, fasting, and pilgrimage. Second is transactions, and that governs buying, selling, and contracts. Third is human relations, dealing with marriage and divorce. And fourth is criminal law, which handles punishments and court proofs. Knowing the specific structure means you could literally pick up any massive Islamic encyclopedia and instantly know exactly where a specific ruling lives.
Number 4. The art of tahara. We're starting with tahara, or purification, because it's the absolute necessary condition for the prayer, the salah. But tahara actually involves fixing 2 totally different things, and you really must grasp this distinction. First, we have hadath. This is an invisible, non-physical state of impurity. You can't actually see it. It requires an action like wudu for a minor state or ghusl for a major state to uplift it. Then, on the flip side, we have najasa. Now, this is a tangible, physical impurity, like dirt or blood, that must actually be scrubbed and washed away from your body, your clothes, or your environment. So to put it simply, it's uplifting an invisible state versus scrubbing away a physical substance.
Number 5. The water matrix.
So, the primary tool you use to accomplish this purification is, of course, water. And the crucial point here is this golden rule. All water is pure until proven impure. The source text actually emphasizes how often people overthink this. They walk down the street, their shoe touches a puddle, and boom, they immediately assume it's impure. But honestly, unless you have absolute proof, like unless you visibly see a physical impurity in that water, the foundational ruling is that the water remains pure. Basically, stop overthinking the puddles.
To make this totally foolproof, scholars divided water into 4 categories. First up is pure water that actively purifies. Think rain, sea, or river water. Second is disliked water. This actually stems from a historical debate about water left in a metal tin under a hot sun potentially causing illness, though the source does note the medical and hadith basis for this is pretty weak. Third is changed water. This is water that is physically clean, but its name has changed, like tea or orange juice, or water that's already been used for wudu. If you spill tea on your shirt, you don't have to wash it off to pray, but you definitely cannot use tea to perform wudu. And note that muddy pavement water is still just water, so it stays in category 1. Finally, the fourth category is impure water, which is water that is physically mixed with najasa.
Which brings us to a massive, absolute game-changing metric in fiqh, 190 liters. This is the modern equivalent of an ancient measurement called 2 kulas, which were these massive clay jugs from Yemen. Now, why does this exact volume matter so much?
Well, what happens to the purity of your water if a single drop of physical impurity, like urine, for example, falls into it? The answer completely depends on that 190-liter threshold.
Let's contrast these two rules. If you have a small volume of water, say a 1-liter bottle, and a drop of impurity falls in, it becomes impure immediately. Even if the water looks exactly the same, you can't use it. But if you have a large volume of water, anything over 190 liters, like a large bathtub, that water remains completely pure and usable unless the impurity physically changes the water's taste, its color, or its smell. This brilliant distinction creates a highly practical mental model for everyday life.
Number 6. Navigating impurities.
Now we are identifying exactly what physical items the Sharia considers to be impure, or najis. We mentioned earlier that the default rule is everything is pure until proven otherwise, right? Well, here is the proof. The Sharia explicitly defines these as physical impurities. It includes animals we are forbidden to eat, like predators with canines, birds of prey, pigs, and dogs. It also includes animals we are specifically commanded to kill, like snakes and rats. Furthermore, any animal that dies without being Islamically slaughtered is impure, as is flowing blood and pus. And remember, if an animal is impure, any liquid that comes from it, like its saliva or milk, is also completely impure.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the ruling on the cat. You might be sitting there thinking, wait, a cat is a predator with canines. And you'd be right. But cats are a specific prophetic exception because they constantly wander among us in our homes and our streets, making them nearly impossible to avoid. The Sharia mercifully designates them and their saliva as pure.
And that mercy extends to a few other really practical exceptions too, like a small, uncontrollable amount of blood from a paper cut or a nosebleed. That is totally forgiven. You can still pray. Or what about insects that fall into your water? Animals without a flowing bloodstream like ants, bees, and flies are not considered impure. And of course, the saliva of any animal you are permitted to eat, like a camel or a sheep, is completely pure. The jurisprudence is just incredibly practical, and it's designed specifically to relieve hardship. Let's look at one really cool historical workaround. We established that an unslaughtered dead animal is impure. But what if you want to use its skin for leather? Well, through a chemical cleaning process called debag or tanning, the skin of a dead animal is actually purified and becomes perfectly permissible to use. The only exceptions to this rule are the skins of pigs and dogs. Also, it's definitely worth noting that the fur or hair of dead animals is naturally pure right off the bat, simply because fur doesn't contain flowing blood or life. We've covered a lot of ground today, moving from the high-level map of fiqh all the way down to the specific rules of tanning leather. So I want to leave you with this final thought. How will mastering these exact, summarized foundational models change the way you approach complex texts going forward? Remember the analogy of the elder and the baby. By taking the time to digest these bullet points now, you have built the stomach to consume the massive, multi-volume encyclopedias of knowledge tomorrow. You're no longer navigating in the dark, you have the blueprint. Keep learning, keep structuring your mind, and we'll see you in the next explainer.